Hello everyone, my name is Luna and today we are crashing down with Aeor and doing a deep dive into episode 101 of campaign 3 of Critical Role and the finale of Downfall. Look, where do we even begin? I watched this episode sort of over about 2 days and when I finished I felt so emotionally exhausted, especially those last couple of hours. I could actually feel the stress levels in my body and I had to just take a break just to kind of shake it out. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to be at the table in that space for 4 hours without a break. It was just so intense. Maybe let's start by just sort of laying out the timeline of what went down, because it took me a couple of passes to really get a sense of what actually happened, especially between Asmodeus, the Lord of the Hells, and Arcadia. I'm going to do a full recap which comes out on Wednesday, but yeah, let's just have a look at the rough order of things. So in episode 1, the gods meet Arcadia in the temple, and now looking back, we know that Arcadia was actually the Lord of the Hells in disguise, and that he must have used an illusory self or maybe a simulacrum or something to also be Father Milo. I think it had to have been Asmodeus the entire time, because I'm pretty sure Arcadia was with someone in the party the whole time, after they met at the temple, apart from at the very end in the Hall of Scrolls. But we know that Selena already had the knowing mentor in her little glass encasement by the time that scene had happened because of the flashback, or the recording. So yeah, Arcadia had to be Asmodeus before that moment. So they're all at the temple talking about their plans, and while we don't know for sure, I feel like the other betrayers have to have been in on the plan, right? I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, who would have guessed that the betrayer gods would betray, right? So they split off into their various places, the hospital, the Genesis ward, and the club. When Salaha and Emhira were at the club, that's when Umletta kind of disappeared for almost the entire episode, and during that time, she recorded the solar angel Acastriel handing over the glass encasement, which contained the knowing mentor, the real one, to Selena. I don't think it's ever explicitly said, but this must mean that Acastriel was working with Asmodeus, because the knowing mentor was clearly trapped by Asmodeus, because as soon as she came out of the encasement, she was like, where is he? And then he must have given the encasement to Acastriel to give to the mages. And given the anger that we saw Acastriel displaying in the episode, it does seem likely that he could have been pushed to do such a thing.
Acastriel, the solar, rushes down. I'm glad that it ends here. Now, I will put to rest the ruin you have wrought upon this world. And he is going to swing.
However, it's also possible that the Lord of the Hells appeared to Acastriel as someone else. He is the Lord of Lies. That's kind of his whole thing. So anyway, once they see this recording, which also includes the mages ordering the Factorum to be fired immediately, the gods realize that they gotta go. And I think that this was the purpose of showing them this recording to begin with, because I was trying to work out what benefit is to that, but I think the betrayers wanted the primes to kind of go into overdrive and force them to get to the Factorum Malleus rather than sort of taking their time and coming up with an alternate solution that would, save the city, like some of them originally wanted to do. Cassida agrees to take them to a Hall of Scrolls where the final plans are held. Look, I'm going to talk about Cassida and everything that happened with her in a bit more detail a little later, because it absolutely broke my heart. But yes, anyway, she takes them there, and Trist and Umletta and Arcadia, who we now know was Asmodeus, stay with her, supposedly to ensure that she destroys the scroll like she promised to. The others go off to the Factorum, and then the Everlight, after hearing the message from her family in the Sending Stone, is encouraged by Arcadia, aka Asmodeus, to leave and join the fight with her divine family, leaving Cassida alone with Umletta and Asmodeus. From then, it would have been absolutely trivial for them to kill Cassida once she recovered the scroll, which they intended to use themselves to kill the prime deities. I mean, what a fun twist for Brennan to throw in, and in fact, a lot of you out there guessed that this might be the case from the very first episode, so my hats off to you, a little clap for you. I didn't want to believe it, honestly. I think I was just as taken in by his performance as Arcadia, and I really liked her, so I didn't suspect anything, and it's really funny looking back on all of the clues that were there, like in I think it's in episode 2, where Salaha grilled Umletta about how long they've been in the city, and Umletta was being really cagey about it. It seems likely now that they were indeed there earlier in order to capture the knowing mistress and also meet with Acastriel. They clearly planned to turn the Factorum on the prime deities from the very beginning, which, checks out. It's honestly pretty sad that a lot of the primes still carry this belief that they are family, and that the universe does does need all of them for this sort of balance, whereas the betrayers are just like, I don't know, we'll kill you whatever chance we get, whatever. This especially struck me at the end of the episode where we see the Wildmother embrace Torog, the crawling king.
I sit and feel the hooks and the barbs claw and bend, and I bleed, and blood flows, and then juices of fruit and honey and sap and everything that is bounty. It's the only gift I can give my poor brother, who I've ruined.
Like, the Wildmother still felt so much empathy and pity and guilt for Torog, even after everything. It was really beautiful and sad to see. Oh, by the way, we did get explicit confirmation that Zahasht was Torog in this t-shirt design that Critical Role put out a couple of days before the episode, just FYI. Aiden and the Dawnfather as well also seemed to share a similar sentiment to the Wildmother, and genuinely appeared to believe that despite his actions, the Lord of the Hells does still love them.
You had your chance for us to be family. Now we're something else. I hate you! And I always will! Forever! Until the stars twinkle out of the sky! Until nothing is left but darkness. I will hate you forever.
Aiden's head explodes with light. Do not lie to me. As he assumes his true form.
I wonder if this was Nick riffing off of the divine awareness ability that a Castriel had to always be able to tell if something is a lie. You know, if his lieutenant has that power, then surely he would have it as well. So I think that that's a really fascinating way to leave that relationship. You know, the Lord of the Hells, the Lord of Lies, declaring that he will always hate the prime deities forever, and the Dawnfather knowing that that is a lie. Which means that, you know, that there's always hope for a reconciliation. If you know that they still hold something for you, then you're going to hope that maybe one day, you know, you can just work it out. I thought it was really fitting that in the end, it was the Archheart who began the destruction of the city by redirecting the energy from the Factorum. You know, the Archheart was, after all, the one who gifted mortals with arcane magic in the first place. And so to be the one, you know, to smite their magical works down, I think was like a real full circle moment. I wonder now how the Archheart feels about having given that gift and then taking it away, you know, if they still carry that guilt and the responsibility that they admitted to Emhira in episode 2. And speaking of the mortal mages, I want to talk about Cassida. Oh, this character really stuck with me. It was so devastating to watch her go from so much hope and joy and faith when she met Trist to someone who was so broken and dejected at the end when she realized that everything she'd believed in was something that wasn't true. She'd worked her whole life to try and help the prime deities defeat the betrayers, to end the calamity, only to see them working together to smite her city down.
You see, she says, how could the gods of good and the gods of evil work together? Why? And you see that Milo says, well, your taxonomy is altered slightly. You perceive a world in which the brightest, sharpest line is drawn between good and evil. The line actually exists between those who matter and those who don't. Sweet little mortal. We're on one side of that line, together, a family. And you watch something break inside of Cassida.
Oh. Imagine how it must have felt to then see the betrayers betray the prime deities. Just like, you know, we all know that they would. Cassida was immortal, but, you know, she could see so much more clearly than the gods. And I do wonder if in her final moments she realized that Aeor was right. The gods did not deserve and had no right to rule over the mortals. Let's give a little clap for Brennan and Ashley, because they really played out these events with, you know, these two characters just so well. I mean, obviously I don't know Ashley at all, and I don't, like, I'm not trying to be, I guess, parasocial about it, but it does seem like that she was so torn, both as her character and as herself, about what to do in Aeor. Don't even get me started about the sending stone scene with Trist's family. Like, I knew Brennan was going to bring it back. Like, no good deed goes unpunished. I knew that if any of them had a family, that Brennan was going to take any opportunity to twist the knife, and he did so in such a beautiful way. I was watching this episode at work because I work the day that it comes out, and so I kind of watch while I'm working, and I had to literally go to the bathroom because I was like sobbing so much, and I was like, if anybody sees me right now, how am I going to explain this? Yeah, see, I watched this made-up story where people roll dice, and it was just like really sad. It really felt like Trist was sort of embodying this idea that a lot of Exandrian stories touch on, which is that there isn't always one true path that is good and one that is bad, you know. As the Lawbearer said, things get really messy when the lines converge, and sometimes it's hard to draw that straight line, you know, between good and bad. Actually, this leads me to a really great interview that Noshir did with the Escapist, where he talked about the differences between the Lawbearer and the Emissary. Noshir said, "Here's the thing about the Emissary. The Lawbearer, justice, rule of law, civilization, balance. A lot of her purview are things that are best done with objectivity. Right or wrong is very easy to do from like 5,000 feet up, you know? But when you get to boots on the ground, things get very, very muddy. And all of a sudden, the shades of grey become very, very difficult to navigate. And I think the Emissary came in with a very clear idea for what is happening and what they are here to do, and is now being faced with a world that is nothing like what they were prepared for." Noshir also talked about the Emissary's physical form being made of stone and ice. Now, a few people had the theory that the ice part of the Emissary's body was actually going to wind up being Isilcross, kind of similar to how we had the reveal that Dominos actually ended up being the shattered teeth in EXU Calamity. But Noshir said that actually the reason that the Emissary was made of stone and ice is because those are natural components, natural parts of the world, and it was kind of a romantic gesture for the Wildmother. Which is so cute and funny. It was so nice that we got to see a reunion between those two characters at the end.
Walk up to my wife. I take her hands. I'm not angry. Not even a little. I couldn't. I couldn't have if you had been there. I couldn't have been that person. It was too much.
A forest with rules.
Mm-hmm. That perfect tree.
Please tell me all about my son.
Take your hand and we'll walk, and I tell you every moment of that brave child.
I just think that was like incredibly sweet. Noshir also talked about the choice to play as the Emissary, and he said that as he was thinking about the character of the Lawbearer, it didn't make sense for them to inhabit a mortal form because the divine order of things is, you know, gods then mortals. You know, up here, she can be objective and true to all of the rules and laws that she puts down in her covenants, but as soon as you get down here, you know, things become really messy and grey, and it's hard to stick to those rules. One little nugget from this interview is that he has written 20 pages of character notes for the Emissary, and oh my gosh, what I would do to like get my hands on those notes. I really want to know what they say. Touching on the Wildmother, it was really cool to see the differences between Asha and the, you know, full godhood of the Wildmother. Asha was very unsettling, I think, like almost harsh and unforgiving, very much tapping into the more like bestial and detached part of nature. But then when we saw her in her full godhood, she was much more, I don't know, like kind and compassionate and very emotional, and she got really distraught at the idea of leaving Exandria behind to go like behind a divine gate. It seems like this really plays into the idea that these avatars, in some instances at least, were not distillations of the entirety of the god, but instead a portion of them, like a little sliver of them. The Wildmother likely knew that what they were going to do at Aeor was going to be difficult, so perhaps she specifically chose to send a part of herself that could do the job without getting caught up too much in it, you know. We also saw this reflected in Aiden, who had a much more hopeful and optimistic outlook than the Dawnfather. The scene at the end where the Dawnfather actually let go of that part of himself, let go of Aiden.
A final tear. A final part of Aiden that hoped falls into the sea. And he stands resolute.
That was really heartbreaking, and it also plays so well with the appearances that we see of the Dawnfather in the future of Exandria in other campaigns. He's a much more stern and authoritative figure than Aiden was. Let's talk about a huge moment that actually happened quite quickly in the scheme of things.
You look off and see a massive arm of the city. Beautiful arches, and suddenly an entire ward of the city vanishes.
Nothing bad's gonna happen to that. That's never gonna come back to bite us ever. Not one. No. Shit. I was waiting for it. Shit.
Oh no.
There it is.
Save goosebumps.
This, of course, is the Cognouza ward teleporting away. For those who haven't seen it yet, the Cognouza ward plays a huge role in Campaign 2 and is in fact where the campaign almost ends, basically ends. So let's look at what we know about the ward. It was headed up by a group of mages known as the Somnovum, which we actually heard referenced in, I believe it was episode 1.
The Ministry of Intention is at the height of their paranoia. There are some within the city. Leadership, though much ostracized, the Somnovum believe that great danger is coming.
The Somnovan took all of their magics and used it to teleport the entire ward away as the city was being destroyed, and it was teleported into the astral plane, which is sort of considered a plane that lies between other planes. Their reality is often shaped by the mind of the people and the creatures that inhabit it, and the reality that exists in the astral plane can also influence the mind of those who find themselves there. It's like a very psychic kind of based area. Once the ward teleported, instead of finding themselves drifting along, you know, happy as Larry, they actually found themselves in a psychic storm.
Didn't end up in the location it wanted to. It ended up in like this horrifying psychic storm in the astral sea that like basically destroyed and merged all the minds of the people that lived there and then shattered their psyche that had to slowly reform over time.
All the minds of the city merged and the Somnovan became one, the Somnovum Omega. The city itself became a body horror nightmare with streets and buildings made of flesh and teeth and sinew and I hate body horror. I had a really hard time with it in Campaign 2, let me tell you. Lucian, the original owner of Mollymock's body, reached out to the city via a tome that he found in the lost ruins of Aeor, and thus began a quest and a mission to reach the ward. What happened next, I will leave you to discover in Campaign 2. The combat itself this episode was absolutely wild, and I really enjoyed watching the players go from like, oh no, this is really, really bad, to like, we are unstoppable! And at first that seemed like really fun, you know, as they were getting these powers, but then as the more we went into the fight, it just seemed like the energy shifted more to like dread and stress. It became so painfully obvious that this wasn't a fair fight. You know, as far as they went and as talented as they were, the mortals did not stand a chance. I think the best example of this is Aiden casting that solar burst.
Every person that I'm peeling off of the board now is one of the most brilliant mortal wizards that ever lived.
I was way more psyched when I started that action than I feel now.
I'm sorry, but like the look on Nick's face made me laugh so much. He looks so dejected. And, you know, as Brennan said,
You're not the heroes, you're NPCs, you're the gods. You have legendary actions, legendary resistances. Time of heroes is over.
I'm the first to admit that I really struggle during combats because all of the like the numbers and the maths and everything just make my head kind of go blah. But this didn't feel at all like a typical combat. You know, the stakes were so high. There was so many incredible narrative moments between rounds and between actions.
I think there has been a question between the Matron and the Dawnfather, which is, are you family? and that question is answered.
I really, really hope that we get a 4-sided dive with the cast for this, because I really want to hear more about their builds and the character choices that they made as it relates to the narrative. So I'm really, really hoping we get that and putting it out into the universe. Please. We did get a few interesting little tidbits about Emhira's build, though, from this interview that Laura did with Game Rant last week. In that interview, she confirmed that Emhira is a level 20 warlock who draws power from her own divine form. Essentially, she is acting as her own warlock patron. She said this about her reasoning for choosing a warlock. Why would she choose warlock? I thought about maybe, would a wizard make more sense? But she wouldn't want to do things that she'd already done. So it might be nice to come back in this life and have it easy. You don't have to learn everything in magic. It just comes to you from another power. So she basically made a pact with herself and she was her own source of power. This interview also had some really fascinating insights into the character creation process and how they all sort of sat down together and they used the example of a Thanksgiving dinner to work out their relationships between each other. And she sort of said that Emhira was like the girlfriend that you don't really know who just kind of stands in the corner. This is even funnier when you think back to that moment where Taliesin said,
I quite like him and quite despise him.
Same.
Welcome to Thanksgiving dinner.
All right, I want to talk about this weird theory that I have. I know a lot of people have this theory, but it's about Emhira and the Matron, because in that same interview, Laura mentioned they had written a lot of backstories for their characters and a lot of that stuff wasn't ever revealed in the show because it was just sort of there to be the foundation for the character. And in the game, there was a particular moment where Brennan compared Cassida to the Matron of Ravens.
You watch her devotion to her child, and the fact that her child is hidden away far from her in a place that she can hardly ever get to see, because there is an arcane project that she believes is necessary for the good of the entire world. And I wonder if you don't see something recognizable in a wizard of this level of focus and dedication.
Now, of course, he may have just been referring to her single-minded passion and pursuit to become a god herself, right? That took a lifetime's work. But I wonder if this comment about a child being left could reference something in the matron's former mortal life. There is a lot of speculation that Paisha Porco, who was Marisha's character in EXU Calamity, was the daughter of the Matron of Ravens. And that was mostly fueled by this moment here.
You remember the first time someone explained apogee solstices to you? It's a woman that you knew as a child. You don't remember her name anymore because nobody does.
Oh my god.
You are fucking kidding me. You learned it from her?
Right. That's right. We learned it from watching you, Mom.
Mom?
Now, it does seem like that clip was Marisha just sort of, messing around and riffing, especially since she later said, at least I'm pretty sure she did, I'll try and find a clip for it, but she said that she hadn't actually given much thought to who Paisha's parents were.
Like why it was so wild when you were like, what about her parents in the game? And I was like,
It was one of those things.
I don't know.
But, it is a fun idea nonetheless, made even more fun when we consider the fact that Paisha was actually Laura's character to begin with. Laura was supposed to play her in EXU Calamity, but due to a scheduling conflict, she wasn't able to, so Marisha took the sort of character that Laura had built and then made it her own. So I wonder if Laura and Brennan know something about the matron's past in this particular moment that we do not. Yeah? All right, let's talk about Cassida's son, Hallis, because I got a lot of comments on my last video asking if this was the same Hallis that made Hallas's Happy Fun Ball. So Hallas is an NPC and the Happy Fun Ball is an item from Campaign 2, and I'm so sorry to say that it is not the same person. The timelines unfortunately don't match up at all, and we would have to kind of get rid of a lot of stuff that's already been said in the campaign to make that work. Hallas was born after the destruction of Aeor, so it can't be the same person. However, some of you out there also think that Hallis, the boy from Aeor, is actually Ludinous. Juicy. Look, personally, I don't buy this just because it feels... I feel like it feels a little too ham-fisted of a connection, especially when it seemed like he was going to die, until the matron saved him. There was not really any guarantee that kid was going to live. But, I also naysayed the theory about Arcadia actually being Asmodeus. So I could be wrong. Well, the big question, I think, is how is Bell's Hells going to respond to this massive info dump from Ludinus? I love the idea of Bell's Hells just sitting there watching 14 hours of a recording. But what do we think? Do we think that this, account of what happened to Aeor is actually going to sway anyone to his side? Do we think that it's immediately going to end up being a fight? Like, how on earth is this going to go down? I feel like I really could talk about this episode for hours. There was just so many incredible moments and there was so much detail and emotion. Like, I literally wrote, I'm not joking, 10 pages of notes watching the episode. But unfortunately, I am out of time for today. I will be live on stream on Tuesday the 30th at 5 p.m. Pacific, which I think is tomorrow if you're watching this as soon as it comes out. But yeah, I'll be live there to chat all about the episode with all of you, and I will also be celebrating my birthday. So I hope that you'll tune in and we can, I don't know, maybe we'll get some birthday cake. As always, let me know your favorite moments in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if you have not already done so. I'll see you all next week for the return of Bell's Hells. Bye! Off to the Factorum. Jesus! What the? Oh my god, no. I'm gonna show you what these cats have done. Look at this. Look at this. Jared is gonna freak. Oh my god. You are the culprit. I'm so pissed off at you right now.